This theme this morning of gratitude, and it's in that heart that I'm so excited to introduce, maybe reintroduce our guest this morning. This morning we have the privilege to hear from Chad Erlenborn. Chad is a friend of mine, a mentor of mine. He served as a pastor for many years and now serves as a pastor to pastors, and he serves with World Vision. World Vision is a Christ-centered community development organization, and for those of you who have been around for a while, you know that we sponsored hundreds of kids through World Vision this past April, and now today we get to celebrate that with our Christmas offering. We raised over $75,000.
Come on.
And today, come on up here, Chad. Chad, I wish we had one of those big clearinghouse sweepstakes here, but here we go. Let's go. I don't know. We should do a picture or something. I don't know if we do pictures like this, but okay, this does not work for me.
Come on.
So give God glory, and again, one more time, put your hands together and make some noise for Chad. Woo!
Wait, hold on. I got a gift for you.
Oh,
So I have a gift for Kyle and for you, but let me just say it really loud. Thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your friendship.
Yeah.
Thank you for our partnership in the gospel. Check it out. Sometimes we can just get through our days, we can just get through the rain, and we can forget to remember that God's doing a beautiful work in the world, and He's doing a beautiful work through you. Because here's what this $75,000 gift does. This gift is helping to bring resources and training to healthcare workers in sub-Saharan Africa. So here's a quick photo of some of the women, or one woman that looks like some of the people that you are going to be helping to train. And in sub-Saharan Africa, malaria kills one kid every 2 minutes, right? Wow. So we get a mosquito bite here in California, we're fine, we get a little itch. There you get malaria, and then you get dehydrated, malnourished, and you're on a trend really quickly. And what our healthcare heroes is what we call them. They intervene with prevention and with cure to keep these children alive. You are literally saving lives. So this $25,000 trains 10 health workers that reaches 5,000 people. That's what it says on the screen. And then 75, it says, is going to train 30. But this is what happened. You not only did 75, but we got this matched by the Gates Foundation as well as the Rotary Club, and it's been tripled. So you're going to reach 45,000 people. That's amazing. So in your zip code here at the church, I think it's 9-something-437. I don't know what it is, but I researched it. 75,000 people live in your zip code of the church. So that's if we were to take your little zip code and put it in sub-Saharan Africa, you would be reaching 60% of that population. So that's the tipping point. That's the transformation that you're having in sub-Saharan. That's what you're doing. Now, this isn't your first rodeo. Kyle mentioned this. You guys had sponsored 252 children in Ghana and in Sierra Leone. And I just got a little gift for you, bro. So I'm sorry, I got to call you back up real quick.
I was hoping you forgot about me.
I didn't forget it. I didn't forget you. My brother, my friend, we traveled together in Ghana. We got stories. He's a very good spades player. But I just want you to open up this little gift.
Do I have to open it here?
Yeah, please.
After what we've experienced in Africa together, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah,
okay.
That's all right.
Oh.
So it's a booklet.
No way. Life Community Church, 4/17/24. No way.
Yes, it is.
Are these pictures of all the kids that we sponsored with holding their sponsors here? So this is you.
I know.
I just need a second. This takes me back to that choosing party where I got to see kids' lives get changed when they had the dignity to choose their sponsor. And one of the things that we didn't expect is that our church sponsored more than we anticipated. So some of them were sponsored in a different country, which means those people I didn't get to see chosen will be here.
That's right.
This is going to be sitting in my office or out there so folks can take a look at it. Thank you, Chad. Yeah. And then thank you, church. I love you. I love being your pastor and to be a small part of what God's doing. I love you guys. I love being a part of what God's doing. Thank you, Chad. I love you. Thanks for being here.
You talk to Kyle afterward, but there's a little QR code. You can even download that for yourself so you can see everybody that participated. You have an opportunity. You know, it's been said that there are minutes and there are moments. There are minutes, Greek word chronos. That's where you get the word chronology. That's where you get minutes, hours, days, and we count the number of minutes. There are minutes and there are moments. Moments in the Greek is kairos. And kairos is like a divine moment, a divine presence. That's what this is. This is a moment in the history of Life Community Church. This is a moment, and those of you that have participated, this is a moment where you recognized God's activity in the world, and you said, I want to be part of that. I want to participate. Because the sponsorship that you did, you 252, you reached 1,000 kids, right? 1,000 kids now are going to be walking for school instead of walking for water. 1,000 parents, 2,000 parents are going to sleep a little bit better at night because of your sponsorship of those children. 45,000 people are going to have access and be protected from malaria. That's what you're doing. And the question that comes to my mind is, how does that happen? Like, how does a little church in Roseville, California get such a big vision for God's heart for the world? It's because of your leadership, and it's because of your faith. Like, somewhere along the lines, God spoke to you, and you realized that God cares for the poor. That God really cares for, and you said, I want to join God in what he's doing in the world. And you stepped into a moment, a divine moment to participate in God's beautiful work in the world. To leave your little, I'm going to school, I'm going to work, I'm just doing my thing, to say, God, I'm part of what you are doing. And so some of the questions I'd like us to center in on today is this: how do we step into divine moments? Like, are there certain practices? Are there certain procedures? Are there ways that we can prepare to participate in God's work in the world? And maybe more so, how do we live wisely to make the most of our limited amount of time and resources on earth? How do we step into divine moments? Are there ways that we can be aware of God's movement in the world and join him in that? How? Well, my short answer to that question, or these questions, is the practices. Like this series that you are in, that we are in, the practices of the way, you're discussing them in small groups, you're exploring different patterns of Jesus, you're participating in spiritual practices to help you center in on God and God's work in the world. Pastor Kyle and I are doing some practices together to strengthen our faith. Now, if he were back on stage, he would say that he's modified some of his practices to his needs. But these are some of the practices that we're doing as part of the 100X Life Challenge. And there's some pretty significant practices going on here. We got, I don't know if you can read that, but we got body, mind, soul, and spiritual practices. We have a nightly gratitude routine where we go through our mind the things that we're grateful for throughout the day. We're working out not once, but twice a day. We're eating clean. We're doing our devotions. We're journaling. We're having a sense of community. We're doing these certain practices to help us to connect to God and God's heart for the world. There's about 200 people that are doing this with us, with me. I've sort of helped, bring about 100 people together to do these practices. And you might be wondering, that's a little intense, Chad. Like, why would you train 45 minutes twice a day? Why would you do devotions? Why would you do journaling? Didn't you graduate from seminary? Why do you need to go through such rigor in your relationship with God? My answer is simply this: I get distracted. I lose my way. I'm prone to wander. To quote Taylor Swift, I'm the problem. It's me. Like, I still sin. I don't love God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love my neighbor as myself. I don't even know some of my neighbors. And I need practices. I need rhythms. I need community. I need different ways of connecting with God on a daily basis, so I am centered and aware of how he's at work in the world. So that sometimes in my day, I can step in to those divine moments. And that's why I'm so glad to share an Old Testament story with you about a woman named Esther. Because Esther lived wisely, she lived courageously, she lived sacrificially, she gave herself for the sake of others. She had this wonderful sense of timing, but she followed certain practices to help her discern divine moments in her life. So if you have your Bibles or a Bible app, and for those of you online, I'd love for you to join us in this story of Esther. And we're going to be reaching back way into the Old Testament, like 2,500 years. We're reaching way back to draw some truths to our lives today about practices that will help us discern the Spirit's leading in our lives. And as we read this story, I just don't want you to admire her strength and her beauty and her sense of timing. I'd love for you to question, how did she do it? Like, how did Esther step into divine moments? And what did she have that we need to live wisely? And as you're maybe finding the book of Esther, let me introduce you to the four characters in the story, because maybe you're new to God or new to the Bible, new to this story. This will be helpful for you to enter into the story. There are four main characters in the story. There's Esther. Esther's a Jewish girl, orphan. There's a Haman. Haman is the right-hand man to the king. And then there's King Xerxes, the king of Persia. And then there's Mordecai, Esther's cousin. And the people of God are living outside the promised land because of their sin. They're living in exile in Persia. But to emotionally connect to this story, I'm going to ask you to join me in a little exercise, if you'd be so kind. So when I say the word Esther, you got to cheer, because Esther's our hero, all right? So you got to go like this. All right, you ready for this? So Esther. That's great. Thank you for doing that. Okay, now Haman, you got to put these people back on the screen. Haman is our villain. He's the bad guy. So we know what you say when you see a villain. You go, very good. Esther. Haman. Thank you. Now, Mordecai is Esther's cousin. He's another hero in the story. So when you see Mordecai, you go, all right, you got this. Now, Xerxes is the king. When you see Xerxes, it's kind of like, I don't know. All right, so can you try that? I don't know. I mean, he's good, he's bad, he's kind of a politician, but this is the story. This is the story that we're entering into, and we're first introduced to Esther. In chapter 2, verse 7, Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, who he had brought up because she had neither mother nor father. She's an orphan. And this girl who was known as Esther. I didn't even have to cue you guys. This is great. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for doing that. His name is Esther. Oh, good. All right. Thank you. Okay. You don't have to do it every time, but so she's beautiful in form and features. Like, I just thought of this just to do this. Anyway, and Mordecai, well done. Okay, just wait for the hand cues, okay? Wait for the hand cues. Had taken her as her own daughter when her father and mother died. Okay, check it out. Esther, orphan girl, living in a foreign land. And in this story, we notice that she was lovely in form and features. Esther's attractive. Esther's beautiful. This is important to the story because the king of Persia, Xerxes, he's looking for a new queen. He just fired his old queen because she disobeyed his orders. So Xerxes created a beauty contest in search for a new queen. Now, this might be hard for us to understand. You know, we're going to have a beauty contest in order to find out who the new queen is. But that's what Xerxes wanted. And he was the king. And the provinces, there's 127 provinces in Persia at the time. It went from the Nile, the upper Nile, to India. So we're talking a massive amount of territory, a massive amount of people. And each province, each 127 provinces, selected one person to represent them and possibly become the new queen of Persia. And Esther, as we learn, made it, she was beautiful. So she was selected. She made it through the prelims. And then she went to the capital city of Susa, where she was with the other women that were in this beauty pageant. And these other women that were in the finalists, right? The 127, maybe there were more. But before she could meet the king, she had to go through some preparations. She had to get ready for her first date with the king. Now, ladies, I don't know how long it takes to go on a date with your guy. You know, maybe it was a half an hour. You know, my wife, she'd probably say 10 minutes. Like she did her hair. But anyone want to guess how long it took for Esther to get ready for her first date with the king? A year. Someone's been reading their Bible. Let's check out the story. Before a young woman turn came up to go to King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months of oil and myrrh, and 6 with perfume and cosmetics. 12 months. Can you imagine the pressure that this young girl felt to look beautiful? 12 months of wondering, will he like me? 12 months of going through her head, am I beautiful? All of her mind was centered around her physical beauty. Can you imagine the pressure that this young girl felt and the challenges of her identity, where her worth and value was based on her physical appearance? Now, according to the story, she wins because she's beautiful. She found favor in the king's eyes. And all the people gathered around to see the new beauty queen. And Esther was launched from this poor orphan Jewish girl to the queen of Persia. But she's not there because of her brains. She's not there because of her personality. She's there because of her physical beauty. She's eye candy for the king. She's the top woman in the king's harem. And after Esther wins the beauty contest, we're introduced to Haman. Haman. Haman is the king's right-hand man. Haman is the chief of staff. Haman is powerful. He's influential. He's got wealth. And Haman doesn't know God. He doesn't follow any of the spiritual practices. Haman has a limited understanding of his time on earth. He's unaware that one day he's going to stand before God and give an account for his life. He's powerful, he's influential, and he's arrogant. Haman is so full of himself that he expects people to not only greet him, but to bow down and worship him. That's what the scriptures say. That Haman would expect people to not just, hey, nice to see him, bow down and worship him. That's how arrogant Haman is, and most people do, because they're afraid of Haman. He's got wealth, he's got money, he's got power. Most people do bow down, but not everybody. Mordecai, Esther's stepfather, does not bow down to worship Haman. Why? Because he follows Yahweh. And he knows there's only one God. And that one God is who he bows down to. Because of his faith in God, he does not bow down and give honor to Haman. That enrages Haman. He gets so upset at Mordecai for not bowing down to him, not giving him the honor that he demands, that he not only wants to punish Mordecai for his lack of honor, he wants to punish Mordecai, Mordecai's family, and the entire Jewish people. And because he's powerful, because he's influential, because he's got a lot of money, he gives the king a substantial amount of money, and he creates an edict and to kill and annihilate the entire Jewish people. And the king, because he says yes. He says, I didn't read the fine print. And he signs the edict and that Haman wrote, and this is what we read in Esther chapter 3, verse 13. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women, and little children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month. And Mordecai heard this. He read the news. He heard the edict, annihilating all the children, even the little ones, young and old. Destroy the Jewish people. He said, this is a big problem. This is an edict that can't be revoked. What are we going to do? And then he thought to himself, I know a gal. I got a cousin who just won the beauty contest. She's the new queen, and Mordecai goes to Queen Esther, and he reads her the edict, and he says to her, hey, Esther, go to the king, beg for mercy, ask him to retract the edict, do whatever you need to do in order to save the people. But Esther's scared. Esther doesn't know what to do, but she does know that it's a capital offense to go before the king without being summoned. She does know what happened to Queen Vashti, who disobeyed the king's orders. She was banished from the kingdom. She does know it's probably not wise to go to the new king and say, hey, king, I know you got a lot of responsibilities, but you're not doing a really good job with this edict. She's scared. She doesn't want to do it. And not only that, Esther's relationship with the king is not going very well. According to the story, the king had not summoned Esther for over 30 days. Meaning, although they're husband and wife, they're not spending a lot of time together. And she knew the king had a full harem and that the king was not necessarily excited about Esther as he once was. So Queen Esther says, no, I don't want to do it. I'm just a Jewish orphan. I got no voice. I got no power. I got no influence. I don't want to approach the king and risk my life. And Mordecai responds to Esther's logical refusal to approach the king with these words. He sent back this answer, Mordecai. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. Esther, this problem is bigger than you think. If you remain silent, you're going to die, not just you, your whole family. And God's going to use somebody else to save his people. But then Mordecai questions Esther's understanding of the moment. And he says these memorable words. And who knows, but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. Mordecai says to Esther, don't miss your moment. Who knows, Esther? Maybe you've come to this royal position for such a time as this. Maybe you're not here just to have nice clothes, nice place to live, nice food to eat. Maybe you're not here to be applauded as the most attractive woman in our land. Maybe God placed you here to help others. Maybe God placed you in this position of power to bring justice and oppose evil. Maybe your life, Esther, is bigger than you think. Don't let success blind you of this moment, Esther. Don't let what the world says about women blind you from God's anointing on your life. And Mordecai challenges Esther to consider the time, to consider her position and this opportunity to save the nation. And Esther listens to Mordecai and responds. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Verse 16. Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will fast as you do. I don't know what you do when you face a difficult decision. I don't know what you do when you're faced with a difficult health decision, if your children are going in the wrong way, if you have problems at work, or if you're going to take this job or get married or lose this job. I don't know what you do when you face the challenges in your life. But Esther followed spiritual practices. Practices that many followers of God have used for years, thousands of years. Fasting, prayer. Fasting is giving up something good to spend that time to talk with God. Fasting traditionally is giving up food, but don't be limited by food. You can see your physician if you'd like to join a fast, but fasting away from food or away from social media or away from something else can help you focus and hear God's voice in your life. Fasting is often coupled with prayer. And prayer, as you know, is communicating with God, is talking with God, it's having a conversation with God, it's listening to His Word. Prayer and Bible reading also go hand in hand. You know, prayer is us talking to God, Bible reading is God's talking to us. And we hear God's voice, and these practices go hand in hand. But Esther not only is doing this privately, she's asking others, hey, my friends, my mates, hey, tell everybody, Mordecai, all my family, all my friends, that I'm facing a really difficult decision. Have them fast and pray. Have them intercede on my behalf because I don't have the strength to go through this challenging moment. I don't know what you do when you face the difficult decisions of your life. Impossible circumstances that you don't know what to do. But Esther prayed, she fasted, and then she said this: when this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Do you hear the courage in Esther's voice? I'm going to approach the king. I'm going to break the law. I'm going to risk my life for the sake of others, and if I perish, I perish. If I die, at least I go down swinging. I am going to approach the king. Now, please allow me to pause just for a moment to acknowledge that often in our culture and in our Christian subculture, we invite our women and our girls to participate in beauty pageants instead of rescue missions. We often isolate our women and our girls into certain roles, into certain places, and we can patronize, we can objectify our women, and we can sometimes believe that a woman is a beauty to rescue rather than a woman on a rescue mission. And if you're a woman here, if you're a girl here, if you're a young woman, a student, and you think that God has called you to do something meaningful with your life, to step out at school, to stand up at work, to do something meaningful at church, to give yourself for the sake of others so you can lead and participate in God's work in the world, don't think for a minute that God's call on your life is anything less than it was for Esther's. That's right. Don't think for a minute that God hasn't anointed you and called you into this moment, because you are not a beauty to rescue. You are a beautiful person on the rescue mission. That's who you are. Esther chapter 5, verse 1, on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. And the king was sitting in his royal throne in the hall facing the entrance when he saw Queen Esther standing in the court. He was pleased with her. He held out her gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom. it will be given to you. Now we got to realize that was not a real response. It was kind of like, Esther, what's on your mind? You know, it says he's not going to give her half the kingdom. But he does ask her, what's on your mind? And in her own way, with her own sense of timing, with the Spirit of God upon her, she understood the moment. She stepped into the moment. And she replied, if it pleases the king, replied Esther, let the king together with Haman come today to a banquet I have prepared for him. Esther invites the king to a party because she knows that he's never been invited to a party that he didn't say yes to. She knows that during the Queen Vashti era, he had this big party, that he likes to party. So he invited King Xerxes and Haman to a party. And he's had the bank, and she invited him to the party, and while they're drinking, while they're enjoying the food, while they're having a good time, the king asks Esther again at the party, what is it that you want? Up to half the kingdom, what is it that you want? And I love, once again, Esther's sense of the moment. Verse 8. If the king regards me with favor, and it pleases the king to grant me my petition and fulfill my request. Do you hear these words? Do you hear the deference? Do you hear the timing? Esther knows what to say when. She's not forcing the moment. She invites King Xerxes to another party. And she says, and it's almost like she understands that when he agrees to come to this second party, it's almost like he's going to agree to her request. Esther has a wonderful sense of timing, but Haman doesn't. Haman is lost in his own world. Haman goes to the party, has a great time. He's coming back from the party, and with all of his wealth, all of his influence, all of his power, he's still upset about that little guy, that little speck, Mordecai, that won't bow down and worship him. He's still upset. In verse 9, Haman went out that day happy. He left the party in high spirits. But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against Mordecai. He was filled with rage. He was so upset that Mordecai would not bow down and worship him. He was overly focused on the one guy that he forgot all the other things that were going on well in his life. He spent his limited amount of time and influence trying to punish Mordecai. He gathered all of his friends, he gathered all of his family, and he goes on an emotional rant. He says, Mordecai's breaking the law. I got to punish him. I got to make him have it. He's got to pay for what he's done. And he unloads on his family, and he goes on this rant. And what I find fascinating is that no one ever says to Haman, Haman, get over it. No one ever says to Haman, it's just Mordecai. You're wasting your time. No one ever says to Haman, you're wrong. In fact, they did just the opposite. His wife and his friends and his advisors suggested that, hey, punish the guy. His wife says, build a gallows 75 feet high and kill Mordecai. And so he did. Haman built this gallows 75 feet high with a limited amount of time, with his limited amount of money, with his limited amount of influence. He went after the one guy. He put all his energy towards the one guy that hurt his feelings. And I wish I could share the rest of the story with as much detail as what we just experienced. But you can read the rest of the story on your own, and you'll find God orchestrating some beautiful moments. But in short, Esther finally communicates her request to the king. And the king not only retracts his edict to annihilate the Jews, Haman is punished for his wrongdoing in the gallows that he created for Mordecai. And then Mordecai takes the place of Haman as the king's right-hand person. It's an amazing story. It's a wonderful story of courage, of discernment, of sacrifice, and of stepping into a moment, a divine moment. And did you hear the practices that Esther followed to enter into that moment? Some are obvious, and one's not so obvious. The obvious ones are what? She fasted. She went without food in order to focus on God, and then she prayed, and she did it together. And she didn't just do it alone. Who else? She also had community. She had her friends, her family, her entire community praying for her. She fasted, she prayed, but there's one practice that's often overlooked, but critical for Esther to step into her moment. Esther had a Mordecai. Esther had a friend, a cousin, a mentor to challenge her, to speak to her, to call her out and remind her for such a time as this that you're not a beauty to rescue, you're a beautiful person on a rescue mission. She had a mentor. But you know who didn't have one? Haman. Haman had friends. Haman had advisors. Haman had a wife. Haman had people speaking, but not challenging him. No one ever told him, Haman, get over it. Haman, you're wrong. No one ever confronted him in love and saying, Haman, I really think you're spending too much time dialed in on Mordecai. You really need to put your time in other things. No one ever challenged, no one ever confronted Haman, and it cost him his life. See, one of the things that we need to remember is that Esther didn't want to go. She didn't want to go in front of the king. She was scared. She was afraid. You can imagine the pressure that she felt, the anxiety inside of her. But her mentor spoke truth to her and grace. You are made for this, for such a time as this. This is your moment. Sometimes I think we misunderstand the spiritual practices. We participate in prayer, we'll participate in worship, we'll have our Sabbath and our fasting and our Bible reading, and those are all good things. I do them all. But if we want to live wisely, if we want to make the most of our limited amount of time, if we want to step into the divine moments that God has prepared in advance for you to do, we must have people speaking wisdom into our lives. We must have mentors, friends, family members that know us and love us and have abilities and times to speak truth, to help us see and experience God's work in our life. Because wisdom isn't just from a book. It isn't just come from on high. Most often, wisdom comes from the people that know you and love you. That's a source of wisdom. And to have a practice where you're pulling from a mentor, a friend, to discern the issues and overcome the challenges and to step in the moments, you must have a mentor, a friend, a family member, a colleague that can challenge you to step into the moments that God's prepared for you. So my questions in closing are simply this. Do you have a Mordecai in your life? Do you have a mentor, a friend that can challenge you, that can speak truth into your life? Do you have someone that loves you enough to confront you when you're going the wrong way? Do you have a Mordecai? Do you listen to that person? It's one thing to have a person that you can turn to. It's quite another to listen to that person. Are you listening? I got a friend, he just confronted me recently. He says, hey, I think you're going the wrong way. I listened. I didn't agree, but now I do. Because he can see things I couldn't see. That's what a Mordecai does. That's what a good friend does. They challenge you. They help you see things. My last question is simply this. Would you be willing to be a Mordecai for somebody else? Would you be willing to speak truth in the lives of your friends, of your children, of your friends' children? Would you be willing to volunteer in the children's ministry or the youth ministry to be that source of wisdom for the young and next generation? Would you be willing to speak truth and to be a Mordecai to the people around you? But my last question is this. Is there a moment that you must step into in 2025? We just lost January. Most of you have forgotten your New Year's resolutions. But is God calling you into something? Is there something that keeps you up at night? Is there something that brings you tears that you weep over? For me, it's providing clean water to kids. I just can't get enough of that. I just got to keep doing it. That's what God's put on my heart. That's the cause I'm willing to die for. What is it for you? What's God calling you to do? You're not here by accident, but by design. What might God be stirring in your heart to step into, to step in faith, to experience God's power and presence in your life? God has moments for you to enjoy his presence in powerful ways. Don't miss them. Don't miss your moments. Draw on the strength of Esther and the wisdom of Mordecai to enter these moments with resolve and with faith for the sake of others. There are minutes and there are moments. Don't miss your moments. Make the most of your opportunities this year. God, I thank you for this moment that we can share together. A moment where we sense your presence and your power. A moment where we understand that we're made for more. That we're just not made to have a nice place to sleep at night and have nice food, but made to participate in something much bigger than ourselves. And Holy Spirit, I believe that you are speaking to individuals right now about needing a Mordecai, having a Mordecai, becoming a Mordecai, and for stepping into moments. Give us the strength. Breathe life into us as we step into the moments that you've prepared in advance for us to do. Thank you for the moment of raising resources for the children and the parents. Bless those kids. Give them life in all its fullness. And do that same in us, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand and sing together.